Hello, thank you all for participating today in the Emory Compass Coordinating Center Transformative Grant Informational Webinar. We're going to give people just a couple more minutes to log on and then we'll start momentarily. Thank you all for joining us today for our Emory Compass Coordinating Center webinar on building organizational capacity as it relates to the Transformative Grant that's out now currently that everyone is preparing to write for. So we're hoping today will be informative and it will assist you all with preparing really great proposals to submit for funding. So we are going to go ahead and get started. Today our agenda includes we're going to do a brief overview of the Transformative Grant opportunity, but many of you have already participated in our webinar series, so that information may be a little redundant, but we're not going to spend too much time on that. Then next, we're going to do a brief overview of Emory University Compass Coordinating Center, and we're going to talk about a lot more in depth around developing the RFP grant application, and then also helping you all understand the criteria for the Emory Compass Center's focus areas. As you all may know, most of you may know, is that the Transformative Grant process is an opportunity that provides community grants to organizations across the Southern United States to support the development of programs and activities that align with the programmatic focus areas of the Compass Initiative and builds the overall capacity of organizations across the South. The overall eligibility for participating in the Transformative Grant application is that to one, be in one of the 9 deep South states, which includes Alabama, Florida, Georgia, Louisiana, Mississippi, North Carolina, South Carolina, Tennessee, and or Texas. Also is required to be eligible that you have a nonprofit status of a 501c3 or to have a fiscal sponsor. I mean, you all get into the application, you would see where you are to upload that verification to your application to demonstrate that you do have 501c3 status, or that you have a relationship with a fiscal sponsor. But we'll get into that a little bit more as we continue to move through the webinar. The other part is the grant period. It is a 12-month period. So I want to make sure to stress that a lot, that it's a 1-year grant. So when you all are thinking about and processing through what you should write for, to keep in mind that it's only for 1 year. So be realistic with that time frame, so you know that whatever you want to propose, that is something that is absolutely achievable within 12 months. Also, the award amount is a maximum amount of $100,000, and it includes overhead as well as your indirect costs. So that's up to $100,000. So keep in mind that you can provide a application and request $100,000, but it's not guaranteed that $100,000 would be awarded. It'll be up to $100,000. So please keep that in mind when you are writing the grant. It's not to say that not to put in an application for $100,000. Just keep in mind that it may be awarded for a little bit less. One of the main focus is for this transformative grant is capacity building. And for Emory, we look at capacity building as something that is ongoing. So when you all are thinking about your grant applications, it's not that we're looking for you all just to have something that's going to be done within a year. We know it's an ongoing process. So with capacity building, we're looking for you to be looking to build knowledge and to improve skills over time, not in just within the 1 year of the grant application. Also, capacity building is an investment that ultimately strengthens our organization's mission, improves effectiveness and future sustainability, and most importantly, improves services for our communities. Now we get into the Emory University Campus Coordinating Center areas, and this will be more specific as it relates to Emory. So again, if anyone is on the call, keep in mind that everything that we will discuss moving forward is for Emory University only, not the other campus centers. It's only for as it relates to Emory University Campus Center. With the Emory Campus Center, we are focused on 2 areas. One is being infrastructure development, and the other is building intentional alliances through coalition building and network development with non-traditional partners. Those are our primary and only 2 focus areas that applicants can write to in the Transformative Grant. The other part is that Emory is focused on not the programs and services. So it's not your outreach, it's not the testing, it's not those things, but it's how those services are executed, how they're evaluated, and how you all look to improving those programs and services, utilizing some of the following strategies, such as strengthening leadership, adaptability to organizational, programmatic, or environmental changes, resource management, improving systems and skills, and supporting cultural values and norms. So we want to make sure that's stressed a lot. It's for you all to look at how those programs and services are implemented. What is the leadership that is involved in implementing and evaluating and executing those programs and services? That is what your focus of your application should be on. So, but we'll get more and more into that and provide a couple of examples, and hopefully that'll provide even more of a visual as far as what we're looking for and what are the requirements for either one of those focus areas that you may choose to write for. Now we're going to get into developing the application. There are 2 primary sections within the application. One is the project narrative, and the other is supplemental materials. In the project narrative, there are a couple of sections that everyone needs to be mindful of that you will be writing to. One is the statement of need. The other is organizational background and capacity, work plan narrative, alignment with guiding principles, vision impact, and budget narrative. And if you also see in the bottom right hand of your screen, you'll see RFP page 11. And on a couple of slides, you will see that we have the page number down there. So you can refer back to the exactly where this information is written in the RFP. In your supplemental materials, those materials are the materials that you would download, you will complete, and then you will upload the completed forms back to your application. Those forms include a project budget narrative, your work plan template, your 501c3 status, your board of directors list, your diversity table, and an organizational assessment. Now with Emory, the organizational assessment is required. You would do an organizational assessment that is within the application. You would download it, you would complete it, and then you would re-upload the assessment. So for Emory only, there's an organizational assessment. It's not the same for other CCs. So keep that in mind. If anyone has applied to any funding before, you all may be familiar with the organizational assessment. So that is for Emory applicants only. Please keep that in mind. Now, I wanted to provide you all an example of what these templates look like that you will be downloading within your application. So when you go to your application and you open it, you'll see work plan. If you see right there on the left of the screen, you'll see work plan. So when you get into your application, you'll see this exact screenshot. This is a screenshot of the actual application. So when we said that the supplemental materials, I'm gonna go back just one slide. When I said supplemental materials, download, complete, and upload the following, this is what you'll see. You'll see the work plan, you'll click, it'll download the work plan, you'll be able to complete the work plan, you'll save it on your system, you'll go to the browser, and then you will find that file, and then you will re-upload it. Same thing with your diversity table. You would download it, you'll click here, download the diversity table, complete it, go to your browser, find your file, and re-upload it. Same thing with the board of directors list, same thing with your project budget. The great thing about the system that you all are using, you can go back and complete the application. So it's not just when you complete everything online that you can't go back and make any changes. You can. So that means that you can go into your application, you can download these documents, complete them, and then come back and upload them. So you don't have to download, upload at the same time. You can take them, you can download it, complete them, review with your team. Is that something you all need to do? And then come back into the system and then re-upload those documents. This is an example of what your work plan template will look like. So we just want to give you a couple of examples of some of the templates that we just mentioned that you will be downloading. So for instance, this is your work plan template. When you download it, it will be a writable form where you can write directly on this template. So utilize this template. One thing we want to stress, the templates that we have within your application, utilize those templates. Do not alter those templates. Do not modify those templates. Use those templates as written. Anything other than what the template has on there, if you add any additional information or you modify it in any kind of way, it may be considered to be incomplete because that is not what we have requested. So it may consider your application incomplete. So please use the templates as written, as provided. Also, this is a budget template. So you all can see exactly what the budget template is, what it's asking for, the budget item, a description, a compass grant, your allocation, how much money you're allocating, any additional funds, and then also what is your total amount that you're asking for. So when I say additional funding from other sources, so let's say for instance that you have a budget item for your staff, and the staff salary is $45,000 a year. So you want $15,000 of that to be paid for or to be covered under the Compass grant, and then the other piece will come from other funds you may have at your organization. So it may come from other money, so fundraising funds or somewhere around that, some other funding source of that nature. So that is where additional funding from other sources, that is what the intention is around that. So with developing your proposal, one recommendation we have is to complete the application, you would need to enter your response to each question directly into the online application. So when you log in, you'll put all of your content in those boxes that you'll see when you log in. Now, one recommendation is for you all to write out your answers in an MS Word document, to write those things out, make those corrections, get people to review it, to look at it, read over it, and then cut and paste it into the actual online system. That is up to you, whatever your preference is. You may not want to do that, but it's just a recommendation that we're just making that has worked out considerably well for other applicants in the past. The other is to please read the entire RFP. Read all of it. All of it is important for you to be aware of every piece of content that's there because it's imperative and for you to be able to write a comprehensive application and to make sure the application is complete. Also, another recommendation is to complete your work plan template and your work plan narrative simultaneously. Why? It's because a lot of that information is similar. The goals, the objectives, who's going to do what, how those duties are going to be divided among staff, things like that. That information is similar for the work plan template and for the narrative. It's some variation between it, but I would strongly encourage you to do those things simultaneously. The other part is your budget template. So when you download that template, and if you go back to where I showed you the budget template before, and I'll go back really quickly, right here you'll see the $2,500. Well, it is required for you all to put $2,500 aside to have a budget line item for the grantee convening meeting. So we will have a meeting for all those who are funded as an orientation type meeting to discuss all your requirements, the support that's available, so on and so forth, for all those who are funded as transformative grantees. So make sure you include $2,500 into your budget line item that's under the category of grantee convening. The other is to be attentive to the allowable and unallowable expenses for Emory University only. Now, there are some expenses that's listed that is for the grant overall, that's for the RFP overall, but there are some expenses that are not allowable and that are allowable that pertains to Emory only. So please, please, please make sure to look at that section, and that's on page 15 of your RFP. The other part is to make sure you answer each question of the RFP, and you can consider utilizing a checklist to make sure you accomplish this. And we can do that, and I'm gonna show you an example what that checklist could look like. So for instance, you have in your RFP, you have a section that says statement of need. And you can see right here on the left, section statement of need is verse 15 points, 500 words, and additional details is written is, please describe the need to build your organizational capacity, skills, and knowledge around the CC you are applying to. In this instance, it will be for Emory. So, and to make sure that you answer each part that is required for statement of need, a statement of need, you can create a checklist. So if you see over here on the right, you see statement of need for ECC, you select the focus area. And then the checklist would be need to build organizational capacity. As you can see right here, please describe the need to build your organizational capacity. I've added that and created a checklist from it. Next, the need to build skills. Next to build, need to build knowledge. So you can make this checklist will help you to make sure that you wrote around building organizational capacity, that you wrote to building skills, and you also wrote to building knowledge. Another example of utilizing a checklist that makes sure you answer each question would be organizational background and capacity. And in the additional details, it reads, please provide a brief description of your organization's history and purpose, including mission, goals, and priority populations. If you don't hold a 501c3, please briefly describe your fiscal sponsor, including its history, purpose, and relationship to your work. Please also describe the role your organization plays in addressing the issues. Now, if I created a checklist just from what is required to answer this question around organizational background and capacity, I would put organizational background capacity, as you can see right here on the right, and then organizational history and purpose. That would be one thing I need to write to. The second would be I make sure I include my mission, my goals, my priority population. Next, I will make sure I describe the role your organization plays in addressing HIV. Please note, as we said before, if you have a fiscal sponsor, you must include the organizational background capacity of the fiscal sponsor, okay? So that's just a little tidbit for you all to utilize. It's usually a really good practice as well. So I would encourage you all to do it. And it will help you kind of do like a checks and balances as you move forward with completing your application. Next, when thinking about funding, we are looking at funding limitations around Emory Campus Center. The main thing that we cannot fund is anything related to medical services. So direct provision of medical services, including medical care, provided directly to patients or provided by an MD, a DO, a MP, a PA, or a Pharma D, we cannot fund those things. Funds cannot support equipment. That means any type of medical equipment, or personnel of the medical care component of an organization. So anything related to medical services, we cannot support that. That is not allowable for Emory. That is for Emory only. The other CCs may not have this limitation, but for Emory Compass Center, we have that limitation. And I would strongly encourage you to read that section in an RFP so you completely clear and get more in-depth information around the limitations around medical services. Now, for allowable expenses, we wanted to break that down a little bit more for you all to have a better understanding of what is intended. And if anyone is wondering, yes, these slides will be available. So you all would be able to utilize this as a reference as you all could start to write your application. So one of the things we wanted to make sure that we was able to expound upon was personnel expenses. Now, funds are awarded in 3 to 4 equal incremental payments. Now, keep this in mind. Now, if you want to hire personnel, and depending on how much you get paid, you are awarded, make sure you keep in mind that that entire amount is broken down into 3 to 4 equal incremental payments. So that means that if your award is $40,000 and it's broken down to 4 incremental payments, then that'd be $10,000 each disbursement. So if you're going to have a person that is going to be paid as part of being on the grant, keep that in mind on how you all do payment, how you all set up your fee schedule, how you set up your any type of fees you may owe to your sponsorships. Just keep that in mind about how the payments are broken down. Once folks are awarded, this is more in depth and broken down a lot more. More details are provided around it, but just keep that in mind as you think about putting people on the grant in order to receive a salary. The other is consultant costs. Now, consultants do not have to be identified at the time of your application. However, they must be onboarded within 3 months of receiving funding. So that means that when you're writing your application, you can say, we will be hiring a consultant to do X, Y, and Z. You don't have to mention their name and so on and so forth. But within 3 months, it will be required for you to provide who that consultant is if you're selecting your own consultant. Who that consultant is, what are their credentials, and then also be ready to utilize their services within 3 months. Also, we have a couple of tips for you to keep in mind when it comes down to working with consultants. And these are just like some need to know, helpful to know type things that we have learned and we have identified as good practice from working with other grantees in the past. And one thing is to make sure that whoever consultant that you're choosing to work with is to make sure that they do not want all funds up front. And to also, a good rule of thumb is to not contract for no more than 20% due up front. So you want to make sure, because you want to allow yourself some wiggle room just in case you need to change consultant mid-project. You haven't expended all your funds already up front. The other is that keep in mind that Emory, the fund disbursements will not be amended to satisfy contractual compensation to consultant. So for instance, if you have contracted or you're under a verbal agreement maybe, or maybe you've already signed the contract and you have not, before the funds have been awarded to you, we cannot amend our contract with you all, our subcontract agreement, in order to meet that compensation requirement. So for instance, if your first incremental payment is $10,000, but you owe the consultant $20,000 upfront, but your first payment disbursement is only $10,000, we cannot go in and amend that contract in order to provide you with that $20,000 so you can cover the costs and cover your contract with the consultant. So please keep that in mind. So rule of thumb is, if you're going to be entering contracts with folks, and you're going to be utilizing this grant in particular to cover the compensation of that consultant, I would wait until we know that you all have gotten awarded and not enter a contract before you are awarded. If you're going to be utilizing the funds from this grant to pay for the consultant. If you're utilizing your own funds, it's at your discretion. But if the funds are coming directly from this grant, I would wait to see how the awarding is going to be, and also wait to see about your and be able to get your subcontract agreement and see what the terms and requirements are. Another thing to keep in mind is that if your organization elects to work with a consultant that you already have a long-standing relationship with, do not communicate in your application or communicate to us that you're going to do a search for a consultant or you're not certain about who your consultant is. If you already know who your consultant is, you already have one identified, that's perfectly okay to go ahead and say that. You don't have to say, oh, we're searching or so on and so forth. But if that's a formality with your organization to do a search first, that's absolutely fine. Just communicate that. We'll do a search as part of our formality, but really we already have a consultant already identified that's going to be working with us. A couple of other things I'm just going to hit really quickly is to make sure that within your contracts with your consultant, make sure that time is included for troubleshooting after the consultation is over. If you all are putting any systems in place, suppose you want to put a payroll system in place into your organization to help in making sure that payroll is done in a lot more efficient manner. Make sure that it's time within those contracts, those agreements with the consultants, or if you're interviewing consultants in preparation for writing this application, make sure you ask them, is there opportunity for troubleshooting after the work is done? Such as something happens or staff needs to be trained or anything like that, to make sure that that's something that's discussed and also kept on the forefront. The other thing that's in the allowable expenses that I want to go over is considerations for allowable expenses that you would see in the application. Meeting space. That meeting space can be something you can include in your application, in your budget. And meeting space includes everything from like AV, it could be food and beverages. Meeting space may not be already existing. So if you already have meeting space that's already attached or a part of your organization, you can't also put in your budget to pay for that meeting space, because that's like double dipping. You already own the space, it's already your space, being on utilized money in order to, from the grant, to pay for that space. If that's the kind of space that typically you would rent out or lease out to an outside organization or outside vendor. Also, you will see in the allowable expenses, you will see mentorship. When we say mentorship, the intention is that you're working with an organization that's high functioning and they have some sustainability or retention practices or leadership practices that they have in place that you all want to be mentored under, so you can start adopting some of that skill set. That's what mentorship means. You can include mentorship in your application. And those things can be paid for. So if you would need to pay for instance, for the mentor's time to provide that mentorship, you want to pay for visits to go visit that mentoring organization, those costs can be included in your budget and within your application. Also, travel to implement the proposed project. So maybe you want to go through a training. Maybe you're putting another internet service in place, and you needed to go and figure out what's the best internet service to utilize. It's another organization that's utilizing like an intranet type system, and you want to go and look at it and see how it works. Or that's a training you want to go to in order to see how a payment system needs to be utilized. You can put money within your proposal, in your budget, to pay for that type of travel. Also, mentoring and twinning. Twinning is pretty much shadowing. You find an organization that pretty much has something in place that you're working to get in place, or they're pretty much similar as far as your goals and missions and things like that. You all can put that in your applications as well. So that means that you will be able to put in your budget time to go visit that organization. But the main thing is to explain why you want to go be mentor on that organization, why you would like to utilize that organization as a twin, to demonstrate what exactly would be the skill set that you will be learning, what would be the knowledge that you will be acquiring. They may want to do something around board development, and you want to see how they convene board meetings. You want to see how they facilitate training, how they do new staff onboarding. These are all a part of capacity building that we are focused on with this transformative grant. So you find an organization, they have that support, you can include that in your grant application and within your budget. The other one is cross training. And we'll get into this a little bit more when we get down to focus area number 2, which focus on coalition building. And pretty much real quickly is that cross training is when organizations come together around the table and you train each other on each other's capacity. So for instance, if you do testing, but another organization does a lot of leadership training, then you all may train them on how to incorporate testing into their programming, and they may want to train you on how they do leadership development with their consumers. So that's one example of that. So please keep those things in mind. Is one reason why we put these things in here is for you all to be to allow you to have flexibility to be creative, and to also encourage working with partners, partnering organizations. So this is another little chart that you all can utilize. It's kind of like a process flow to try to help you just kind of organize how you want to go about writing your grant. Like for first, you would download and read the RFP, attend RFP webinars, which you all are doing right now. Also, if you are identifying a proposal writer, if that's someone external, it's going to be an internal, if you're going to have a team. And then also potential partners you may want to start contacting them now, to start talking about how you all can potentially work together and what you all are proposing, what you all like to do. Next would be gathering data, in which would be getting the information you need to do your diversity table, to write your statement of needs, start drafting your work plan, get any signatures that is going to be required. Next would be peer review your proposal. When I say peer review your proposal, that means that you're letting other people read your proposal. Other staff members, board members, other organizational partners, letting them read your proposal to see if they see anything that needs to be revised or added, and making sure all your questions have been answered. And then the last thing is submitting your completed application by 11:59 Eastern Standard Time on September the 23rd, 2019. Okay. Now we're going to move into the focus areas for Emory University Campus Center. And I also want to stop just 1 second to let everybody know to please put any questions that you have in the chat box. We are monitoring the chat, so at the end of the webinar, we will go through and see what questions have come up. So you can start putting those questions in the chat box as we go through the webinar, or you can wait to the end. I would encourage you to start putting them in now as things come up, so you won't forget, and also so we won't run out of time. We want to make sure that we get to everyone's question. Okay, so these are examples of some of the proposed activities that you can write to or propose as part of your application. So some of those things can be cultural competency training, health equity training, coalition development training, pilot and demonstration projects, public health capacity building, community engagement coalition building, program research and evaluation. Okay, so those are some of the activities that can fall under either of the focus areas. Now with the focus area 1, that's infrastructure development projects. Now that is a popular one that we really got a lot of applications around last year, was the infrastructure development projects. So just to go in depth and explain a little bit more about what that is. With infrastructure development, it is pretty much strengthening the overall effectiveness of your organization. So it will go within the capacity building areas of mission, vision, and values, board and leadership development, finance and administration, service delivery and impact, resource development. Resource development is like your fundraising, your grant management, your grant development mechanisms, things like that. Communication and marketing plan enhancement, internal management, innovations in delivering public health services. Now, the proposed activities and strategies to strengthen the overall effectiveness of the organization's capacity building areas include, but not limited to, organizational community assessments, service evaluations, long-term plan development, and technological enhancements. So therefore, if you want to update your mission, vision, and values to be more synonymous with what is happening today with technology, social media, and things like that. So one of the things that will be required is technological enhancements, but technological enhancements will be under your mission, vision, and values. So that means that you're going to be revising your mission, revising your vision, revising your values to be more intentional about being more tech savvy and reaching people more so online, and also using cutting edge technology to do training and things like that. So I'm going to show you an example of a work plan that an organization submitted last year that was awarded that focused on board development. So I just want to give you an example of what that looks like. So for instance, the goal of the organization was to strengthen board governance and staff capacity. So the main objective of their grant was to focus on their board. Now, if you can see, the objective is they have 4, which is the board and executive director will attend 1 annual leadership conference. Organization would join 2 membership organizations. Board would create a board member policy, and board would create a board learning calendar. Their action steps include board will attend at minimum 1 training to learn about 4 core capacity building areas, which was governance, sustainability, succession planning, and nonprofit management. Some of the outcomes that they had was organization would build and retain a strong board, creation and adoption of board policies and procedures. A time frame was for a year. So for the entire year, this is what they're going to be focused on. That's completely okay. For a whole year, but this is a lot of work. And from reading from this organization, they were really trying to stabilize their board after having it be unstable for quite some time. So it was going to take a year in order to do this kind of work, due to the fact that they were really trying to make sure that after this, that the board had the tools necessary in order to sustain itself. And then the person responsible was program director, the board chair, and then they will also have a consultant. So this is an example of what infrastructure development will look like that's focused primarily on board development. So if you all want to focus on one thing like board development, that's absolutely okay. If you just want to focus on volunteer management, that's absolutely okay. The main thing that we want to stress is that you don't have to do so much in such a small amount of time. If you all recall a little bit earlier in the webinar, we said to also be realistic with the 1 year that you all have, that you don't have to try to do everything within 1 year. The more stuff you have written does not automatically make your application the strongest. It's what makes it the most realistic and what's most detailed, and how detailed you are in outlining how these things will be accomplished. Those are like the main things that we want to stress to everybody. Your SMART objectives for your work plan. So 1 is to be specific. And when you download your work plan, you'll see, and I'll show right here at the top, go back, you'll see right here, it shows what your SMART objectives are, which is specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time. So a couple of examples would be details. Being specific means being detail oriented. Know how long it's going to take. Know how many days, how many months, how many people, that kind of thing. We'll get this done by this time, so on and so forth. Measurable, making sure that you have proof that has been done and that you are demonstrating proof that it has been successful or achievable. When we say achievable, we want you to be realistic with the time frame. If you say we are going to revamp all our board policies and procedures within 2 months, we are going to ask if the 2 months is something that is feasible, based on the fact that you may have said in your application that your board is newly established. and that you don't really, and you're still trying in the mode of recruiting board members. So therefore those, and a consultant hasn't been onboarded yet. So those things have not been done. So we want you to be realistic in what you all want to achieve. The other is making sure it's relevant, that it connects to the project. And this is one thing I want to stress, not only just with the work plan, but also with your budget. When you're writing your budget, whatever you write in your budget, it needs to connect and be relevant to your proposal. Please do not put anything in your budget, and there's no mention of anything like that in your budget. So for instance, you wrote a proposal around, I'm gonna go back to utilizing boards, right? But in your budget, you got stuff as it relates to volunteer management training and things of that nature. But there was no mention to volunteer management in your proposal. So all those things need to match. So make sure that your work plan, your budget, proposal all matches. It all goes together. It's all relevant to each other. And then time-based, making sure that you put time frames. We'll do this within 2 months. We'll do this within 3 months. We'll do this within the next 4 to 5 weeks. And making sure that you put those things in your work plan. Okay. So focus area number 2. This is building intentional alliances through coalition building and network development with non-traditional partners. So this is the second area, focus area for Emory University Coordinated Campus Center. So here we have, hold on 1 second, I'm sorry. Okay, all right, so here we're trying to, this focus area is pretty much about you building relationships with other organizations and creating like a coalition of organizations. Under this focus area, it includes developing partnerships and building coalitions among organizations with similar goals to leverage the skills, strengths, and resources of each coalition partner. When we say leverage, we're saying that by you building a relationship with another organization, you all have a stronger skill set. So for instance, you may be really good at fundraising or writing grants. Another organization may be really good in community outreach. Therefore, you all two together, that helps with creating a really solid fundraising strategy. They understand how to reach community, and they know probably relationships. They may have relationships with organizations or individuals that you all may not have, but you all know how to do fundraising. So with those two together, you are leveraging the skills and the strengths that you already have in place. Second, the proposed project should share a common goal and demonstrate the principles of shared leadership through innovative approaches. Again, this is an opportunity for you to think outside the box. You don't have to be cookie cutter with this. This is an opportunity for you to bring non-traditional partnerships together, which is the third, which is non-traditional partnerships. We define non-traditional partnerships as organizations that have a demonstrated skill set of community organizing, engagement, and mobilization across southern states, but have not had an extensive history of working with an HIV-specific focus. So I know that's a lot, but we have an example in order to demonstrate exactly what we mean by non-traditional partnership and what we mean by having a shared goal and what we mean by having an innovative approach. So we'll get into that right after this slide. And I just want to hit real quickly the criteria that is necessary for focus area number 2. One, it needs to be 2 or more organizations. Cannot be an organization of just one, because it's a coalition. So you have to have 2 or more people at the table. The other is the budget submitted with the proposals in this focus area should include costs that may be incurred by each of the partner organizations. Now, this is really important. If you have a coalition of organizations that are coming together, each person is going to acquire some cost to participate. But if there is nothing in the budget that provides any type of compensation, any cost, any stipend, nothing whatsoever, then that is not really meeting the criteria for this focus area. So people may have mileage, people have staff time, people need to buy supplies, they may need some type of equipment. All those things need to be taken into consideration. All partners' costs should be in one budget. So you don't have to have a budget per organization that's going to be part of this coalition. So if you have 2 organizations, organization A and organization B needs to be in one budget. They don't need separate budgets. So everyone needs to be under one budget. The other thing is the lead organization would be the recipient of the grant funds. So that means you have to choose who is going to be the lead organization. The lead organization will be responsible for the grant reporting, it will be responsible for the evaluation, and it will be the point of contact for the award. So lead organization, pretty much all responsibility is going to fall upon that lead organization. So please keep that in mind. So that means that the lead organization is also going to be responsible for checks and balances amongst the partners to making sure that you all are meeting your deliverables, your deadlines, and everyone is staying motivated and staying in tune with the project that has been agreed upon. All right. So successful applicants for this focus area could include small and emerging organizations. Remember, we're looking for non-traditional partners. It could be small organizations, grassroots organizations, organizations that work with immigrant or refugee populations, justice reform, reentry providers, housing agencies, fraternal or civic organization populations, and also to demonstrate equitable practices. Equitable practices in leadership, such as significant changes or decisions and project goals or budgeting, should be made with the agreement of all members of the partnership. Now, because this is a coalition of organizations, it's very easy for the lead organization to make decisions because they're the lead. But it's imperative that each person's voice is heard and is brought to the table when it comes down to making any type of significant changes. And you all need to decide what a significant change is. But we'll get more into depth around all these nuances once organizations are funded, so no worries. We just want to make sure that you all understand that when you are bringing people to the table and you are making a decision around being partners. Also, each organization that is a part of the collaborative project is responsible for fully implementing the project goals and activities. So everyone that comes to the table must be committed to satisfying all the project goals and activities. All that weight cannot fall on the lead organization or any two organizations. If it's more than two, everyone must share their responsibility. So this is an example of what that would be. Excuse me 1 second. Okay. All right. So this is an example. Now, these are some made up organizations that have come together to build a coalition. So the scenario is a project in rural Mississippi, and we put Mississippi on there because I am from Mississippi. Project in rural Mississippi proposes to develop a coalition of housing providers who can share information, strategize, and advocate for provision of safe and stable housing for youth living with HIV who are homeless or at risk of becoming homeless. Okay? So this is the scenario. This is what their shared goal is. This is what their shared interest. Now these are the organizations that are now coming together to build this coalition. Now we have Crisis 360. They are a group home program, and they provide housing to youth that are victims of or survivors of physical, sexual, or emotional abuse, and also human trafficking. And they also have mental health diagnosis. SEED is an organization that focuses primarily on trans women and providing trans women of African American descent with preventive tools, and they specialize also in community outreach. Here's to Outreach. It's an organization that specializes with folks who may have experience with substance abuse, and also same gender loving men and transgender folks, and also folks who are diagnosed with HIV, with their focus on homeless and high risk of becoming homeless. The African Women's Center is an organization that focuses primarily on refugees and immigrants from Africa, and they provide health education to those folks. And then we have Normal Media, and they provide primarily the work they do is all on social media, all through some type of technology, and that's how the work they utilize. That's what they utilize in order to reduce stigma amongst LGBTQ folks, including those who are living with HIV and coping with mental health disorders. Now, this is just a made-up scenario to show you an example of what Focus Area 2 will look like if you decide to write for it. So if we break it down just a little bit more, some of the commonalities among these organizations would be they target youth, and they do community. Each one does community outreach. Each one does housing and safety, and each one deals with mental health some type of way. Now, the differences are 3 of the 5 organizations are grassroots organizations. HIV is not a primary focus for each organization, such as the African Women's Center and Crisis 360. Variation in leadership, 2 of the 5 organizations are led by a person of color, same gender loving, and person living with HIV. And 1 organization, Normal Media, their outreach is done through media only, not face-to-face like the others. So now you see their commonalities, and then you see their differences. However, they all come together for leadership, to leverage, and to have an innovative approach to accomplishing a shared goal. Now, we already talked about the shared goal is that they want to increase housing provisions for people, for youth living with HIV. Now, this is what their approach is and how they're going to make sure that there's a leadership component amongst all the organizations, especially with those who are grassroots. And then there's also making sure that they have an innovative approach and that they are leveraging their skill set and their resources. So for instance, Normal Media would take the lead to create a social media campaign that increases awareness around housing opportunities for each organization. Crisis 360 will be trained by each organization that's part of the coalition on how to incorporate HIV testing and counseling into their outreach services. And then the other is the collaboration agrees that each organization will benefit from intake procedures for organizations that focus on housing for people living with HIV, that is inclusive of immigrant communities, youth of trans experience, and with history of substance abuse. And then here's the outreach. We'll lead the evaluation of the project, working in partnership with Emory Compass Center evaluation team. Now that's just an example of what that focus area will look like. And again, you all will get the slides so you can refer back to this if you find that it was helpful. Now, this is the criteria that all the boxes that they have checked. Remember, I have stressed about having a checklist, utilizing a checklist as a good practice. Now, this is the checklist from this scenario. They have, each organization has similar goals to leverage the skills. Remember, we said that they all work with youth. They all do some type of outreach. The proposed project partners demonstrate the principles of shared leadership through innovative approaches. Remember, we talked about the fact that Crisis 360 will be trained by the other organizations on how to incorporate HIV into their outreach services, and that Normal Media would create some type of online campaign for them to increase their fundraising efforts. The other thing they've checked off is that partnerships bring together non-traditional partnerships. You have one organization that deals with human trafficking, another one deals with African refugees, another organization that deals with substance abuse. All of those are different. They're non-traditional. Traditionally, you may not see those partnerships together any other time. The other is 2 or more organizations at the table. Is to bring together smaller emerging organizations or grassroots. Remember, we said 3 of the 5 are grassroots. And it brings together populations such as immigrant and refugee populations. So we're checking all those boxes. We're meeting the criteria. So therefore, this satisfies the focus area number 2. Okay, now we're getting into our reminders, and we are getting close to time as well. So now we're going to hit the reminders, and we are going to go into our questions. And I'm just going to throw the reminders up on the screen and jump straight into the questions so we can make sure that we're half time in order to answer everyone's questions. So give us 1 second. All right, so I see one of the questions: will these slides be available to participants after this webinar? Yes, they will. You will be able to access those questions on www.gileadcompass.com. Is there a Word template for the narrative available? Yes, it is. So when you go online and you go to www.gileadcompass.com, you click on the Transformative Grant, you will see download here, where you will be able to download the entire narrative and have a PDF version of it, print it off, and then you'll be able to read it and utilize it as a guide, make copies, give it to your folks, email it out. So yes, you can download You can download it as a PDF, not as a Word document. The next question is if there are community organizations that our organization is a fiscal agent for, can they submit applications under our fiscal agency separate from our overall application? Okay, so it sounds like you're asking if the organization that you are a fiscal sponsor for can apply for funds, and can you apply for funds as well? So this is where you have to be really careful. The main thing is the money that is awarded needs to go to that organization that you are sponsored, that you are the sponsor for. And that must be really, really clear in your budget, that the money is going to that sponsored organization. Now, I would not say do not apply. I would say apply because you don't know who's going to get funded. But yes, the answer is yes, but you need to be really, really clear that the money is going towards the capacity building of that organization that you are the sponsor, the fiscal sponsor or the fiscal agent for. When you say we need to download the verification of our 501c3, do you all specifically have formats for all that you all want us to use? Okay, so I need to go back and make a correction. There's not a verification that you download. What you would do is just upload your IRS letter that says that you are a 501c3. So there isn't a template, anything like that you're supposed to fill out or complete for us for your verification of 501c3. You just will upload your verification letter from your IRS or from your letter from your fiscal sponsor. So please excuse me, I'm sorry for that error. Let's see what else. Will nonprofits of all sizes be allowed to apply, or is this only for grassroots organizations? Nope, anybody can apply. We go back to that criteria, the eligibility. All we need, you need to be in one of those 9 Deep South states that we mentioned. You need to have a 501c3 or a fiscal sponsor, and you also need to have, those are primarily like the main things, and then also making sure that you read those other criteria around for Emory, as far as it not going towards anything around medical services. Okay, so you can be a small organization, you can be a grassroots organization, you a 501c3, have a fiscal sponsor, you're one of those 9 states that we mentioned, and you meet the criteria for the focus areas for Emory Campus Coordinator Center or for U of H or for SAC, you are more than welcome to submit an application. Meeting space. What if you're looking to upgrade our meeting space with technological or comfort enhancing updates, redesign projectors, What do you mean by the capacity of this space? Okay, so yes, you can do that. That is allowable. If you all want to enhance your meeting space, that's fine. Now make sure now you don't write a grant for meeting space only. But if meeting space, so let's say that you want to do the coalition building one. And one of the things with the coalition building is that that is going to become like the primary space for these organizations to come together to do training, to do outreach, to do testing events, And in order for that to happen, you all need to enhance your meeting space. You can absolutely include that in your grant application. Just make sure it all connects to the overall objective of your grant. What do you all mean by the capacity of the fiscal agent? So that means that if you have a fiscal agent, when you are going through like the statement of need, and you're talking about the capacity of the current organization, why you need this grant, why you need these funds, you also need to include that perspective from the fiscal agent too. You know, why the fiscal agent can provide you with what you're writing for. So for instance, you have you want to do board development. So you need to also not only talk about the board development from the perspective of the organization that's writing, but also from the perspective of your fiscal agent. Going down, does long-term plan development include succession planning? Yes. The answer to that is yes. Absolutely. Another question is, our organization search HIV positive individuals as part of our overall aim to improve the lives of members of the LGBTQ community. Could we submit an application for a project that would enhance our ability to do such as long as we can demonstrate how the demographic for Compass will be effective? Huh. Submit an application for a project that would enhance our ability to do such. Okay, so with this one, from reading your question, Marcus, this one looks more so it's talking about a programmatic perspective. It's a programmatic perspective, like it sounds like it's more in the line of SAC or University of Houston's focus areas than ours. Now, if you wanted to do something around individuals as part of an overall aim to improve the lives of members of LGBTQ, and you want to look exactly how your organization structurally is doing that. So, for instance, if you feel like your staff needs more training, a better onboarding system in place, a curriculum in place, things like that, then yeah. But you just talked about the actual work with the LGBTQ community. That sounds more like a SAC or University of Houston focused area than Emory. Yeah, these questions are great. Can an organization apply for more than one project within a focus area? Can you apply for projects on the focus area 1 and focus area 2? The answer to that is as well. You can apply to more than one focus area, but you cannot apply to more than one Compass Coordinating Center. So you decide to write to Emory, you write to Emory. You don't write to Emory, Houston, and SAC. You write to Emory. But if you want to submit 2 applications, that's absolutely okay. Maria says, can an organization apply for different funding sources, opportunities from Gilead if they have already received funding? What if an organization wants to go paperless and add more tech-savvy intake and assessment processes? Would that be applicable to focus area 1? So 1, it sounds like you're saying if you have funding from Gilead from some other funding streams, can you still apply to us? Yes, if you currently have funding from one of the Compass centers, which is Emory, U of H, or SAC, you can still apply. If you already have a transformative grant currently, if you were funded last year, if you were part of the 2018-2019 grant cycle, that's different. That's different. So that means that you would be able to write again to be funded, but that the project would have to be completely different than what you got funded for last year. And for the second part of your question, the answer is absolutely yes. Absolutely. Yes, you can. And I think that is the last question, folks. If you have any other questions, please, you can go to www.gileadcompass.com to get a lot of your questions answered and to download your narrative. You may also send any other questions to Emory at gileadcompass.com, Emory@gileadcompass.com. And we'll put that email in the chat box, the Emory@gileadcompass.com. I'll throw it in there really quickly. Oh, there you go. Thank you, Anna. So you can send out your questions there. If you have questions that were not answered or we didn't get to, or you need a little bit more clarification, please send your inquiries to Emory@gileadcompass.com. And with your contact information again, oh, there it is, Emory@gileadcompass.com. So I think I have really stressed to send things to that email address. Thank you all again for participating. We really do appreciate it. And good luck to each and every one of you. We look forward to getting your applications. And you all enjoy the rest of your day and your weekend. Thanks. Bye-bye.